Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dear speakers, dear participants, good afternoon. Bonsoir à tous et bienvenue. My name is Gloria Aguedo-Cotonou, the Africa Director of Réseau des Femmes Leaders pour le Développement, Women Leaders for Development. And I'm delighted to welcome you this afternoon and to facilitate this conversation. So whether you are from Dakar, from Cotonou, from Nairobi, welcome to this Pan-African dialogue on digital violence and safety strategies. Some information on housekeeping before we begin. We have simultaneous interpretation available in English and French, please. If you are on your laptop, it is very easy, but if you are on your phone, you'll see a globe. Just click on it and choose the language in which you'll be at ease. Just to remind that this is a 19 minutes of webinar. We will have a rich panel discussion followed by interaction. Please use the function of the chat for your questions throughout the webinar. We will address as many as possible during our question and answers phase. We're recording this session and will be shared this recording in all our platforms within 48 hours. So today's webinar comes as a pivotal moment. Across our continent, digital connectivity is expanding rapidly, bringing unprecedented opportunities for economic participation, political voice, and social connection. But for women and girls, this digital revolution has a darker side. Every day, African women, activists, journalists, politicians, and every user nowadays face cyberstalking, online harassment, image-based abuse, and doxing. There are not isolated incidents. There are systematic attempts to silence women's voices and push us out of digital space. That's why RFLD developed the platform African Digital Safety Compendium, the first comprehensive continent-wide resource covering all 55 African Union member states. This platform provides detailed country profile and legal framework, evidence-based data on technology, facilitated gender-based violence, practical digital safety tools, and survivor support pathways, real-time surveillance of emerging threats. I want to give a special recognition to my colleague, Emmanuel Vlavono, who will be presenting the compendium, finding shortly. Her leadership is developing this groundbreaking resource has been very, very useful and extraordinary. So today, we're joined by 4 exceptional panelists representing different dimensions of this work, from legal reform to platform accountability, from digital security training to transnational advocacy. Together, we will explore that works, what's missing, and how we move forward collectively. So let's begin. I'm pleased to introduce our distinguished panelists. So I'll leave the floor to the 4 panelists one by one to present themselves, and then we continue. Thank you. So I give the mic firstly to Emmanuel to present herself.
Bonjour à tous. Merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Alors, moi, je suis Emmanuel Lavoni. Je suis en charge de RFLD. Je suis en charge de tout ce qui est genre. Voilà. Est-ce que
Thank
je
you,
commence?
Emmanuel. No, no, merci. Thank you, Emmanuel. And we'll give the floor to Omolara to present herself. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Omolara Balogun. I work with the West Africa Civil Society Institute as the heads of policy influence and advocacy, and also the country manager for WACSI office in Nigeria. So I believe colleagues, WACSI is a capacity strengthening institution focusing on knowledge management, policy advocacy, and capacity building for civil society. We also provide extensive support to women's movements and advocacy support on issues like this. So it's a pleasure to be here to join colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Omolara. The floor is open to Dima.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much, Gloria, for the invitation to this timely webinar. My name is Dima Samaro, and I'm the Executive Director of Skyline International for Human Rights. We work on documenting digital rights violations by states, but also companies in the Middle East and North Africa region. And I'm also a member of the steering committee for VUCA coalition, which my colleague also Shubi will talk more about. Again, it's an honor to be joining this discussion with you today.
Thank you very much, Dima. Shupi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Gloria. Hi, everyone. My name is Shupikai Gwabuya, but you can refer to me as Shupi, as you can see. I am very honored to be part of this panel. I am the coordinator for the VOCA Coalition for Civic Action, and we basically, my role really is to coordinate the governance and the political judgment around coalition governance, and I am excited to be here linking that with the work that the feminist movement is doing, led by RFLD. So thank you very much.
Thank you, dear speakers. So now we'll enter into the webinar, and I come back to our first speaker, Emmanuel, and then I'll throw the question in French because I'll be speaking English and French this evening. Thank you for the opportunity. So, merci beaucoup, Emmanuel. Alors, commençons par toi. Le compendium du RFLD présente la cartographie la plus complète de la violence numérique à travers l'Afrique à ce jour. Présente-nous les conclusions clés. Que nous disent les données sur l'ampleur et la nature de cette crise à travers nos 55 pays.
D'accord. Déjà, merci de m'avoir donné la parole. Avant de vous présenter les données clés, je voudrais dire que ce compendium regroupe non seulement les données, mais ça a été mis en place déjà pour apporter un appui réel aux survivantes. Et également, ce compendium donne la possibilité non seulement aux OSC, mais que vous soyez une personne morale ou physique, vous pouvez utiliser les outils juridiques que nous avons mis en place, que nous avons mis sur cette plateforme-là pour outiller vos plaidoyers. Donc, ce que je vais faire, je vais partager mon écran pour que nous puissions, que ce soit interactif, que nous puissions voir concrètement ce que c'est le compendium. Alors là, je vais partager mon écran. Est-ce que j'ai la main pour partager? Oui. OK. Voilà, vous voyez mon écran? Je n'entends personne et je ne sais pas si on m'entend.
Oui.
OK,
C'est bon.
d'accord. Donc, voilà un peu comment ça se présente, le compendium. Donc, la plateforme, elle est assez ergonomique, comme vous pouvez le voir. C'est fluide et vous avez là les trois raisons pour lesquelles, les trois principales raisons pour lesquelles le compendium a été mis en place. Donc, c'est le soutien aux survivants, la surveillance en direct. Donc, ça veut dire que vous avez les données en temps réel et vous avez les réformes juridiques. Donc, je vais demander à quelqu'un de me donner, par exemple, son pays pour qu'on puisse voir sur la carte, une carte interactive de l'Afrique, les risques en termes de numérique, les risques dans son pays. Donc, on va prendre un exemple qui se propose pour qu'on puisse voir un peu. Bon, moi je partage mon écran, mais donc je n'ai pas accès au chat. Je ne sais pas si quelqu'un a écrit un pays. Mais voilà comment ça se présente un peu. Donc, les données qui sont en vert sont les données où il y a moins de risques. Les risques sont vraiment moindres. Et lorsque c'est en jaune, les risques sont modérés. Puis, vous voyez en rouge les risques élevés en termes de violence numérique. Donc, on peut le constater là. Il y a suffisamment de violence. Normalement, tout devait être vert. Lorsque tout est vert, là, au moins, on est rassuré que, bon, en Afrique, il y a pas beaucoup de violence, mais de ce qu'on voit, c'est assez grave. Donc, c'est pour ça que le compendium a été mis en place pour vous outiller. Donc, nous allons repartir sur la page principale pour que je vous montre également la bibliothèque qui a été mise en place pour vous. Donc là, en fonction de ce que vous recherchez, que ça soit des violences sur les abus numériques ou que ça soit des cas juridiques ou cybersécurité, à vous de choisir. Et lorsque vous choisissez, vous avez des articles, vous avez des documents, des thèses, vous avez tout ce qui est protocole, vous avez les tests. Donc, n'hésitez pas à aller voir tout ce que nous avons mis là pour vous outiller, pour outiller vos plaidoyers. Donc, nous allons voir également le cadre juridique, tout ce que disent les tests. Donc, comme vous pouvez le voir à l'écran, vous avez, bon, je ne vais pas prendre le risque de cliquer à cause de la connexion, mais c'est pour vous dire que nous avons les données vraiment récentes et probantes pour vous aider dans vos plaidoyers. Donc, n'hésitez pas à aller voir les cadres juridiques qui sont mis en place là. Donc, je voudrais bien qu'on prenne un exemple de pays pour voir un peu ce que nous avons à disposition. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui veut qu'on prenne son pays pour exemple? Madame la facilitatrice, je ne sais pas s'ils ont mis dans le chat, mais bon, je prends à tout hasard le Burkina.
Oui, il y a quelqu'un qui a mis Algérie.
Ah, Algérie, ok. Après avoir fini le Burkina, on va prendre l'Algérie. Donc, l'Algérie présente...
Je profite aussi pour dire que tu as 2 minutes en plus.
Ah, déjà?
Parce que c'est 8 minutes par personne.
Ok, d'accord.
Oui, merci.
Donc là, nous avons le Burkina qui présente un risque modéré, mais toutefois, nous faisons des recommandations parce que déjà le risque, il est modéré, il n'est pas vert. Donc, c'est au Burkina maintenant de prendre en compte les recommandations que nous faisons pour que ça ne s'aggrave pas. J'ai cru entendre Algérie tout à l'heure. Donc, le risque est modéré là aussi. Vous pouvez lire le résumé sur votre ordinateur ou sur votre téléphone, l'état des lieux des risques numériques, les cadres juridiques et politiques que nous avons utilisés pour mettre en place ces données-là et surtout les recommandations. C'est ce qui est le plus important. Et nous tenons à dire que ce profil pays est basé sur des données agrégées issues des rapports de surveillance 2024 à 2025. Donc, ce sont des données récentes. Et donc, nous repartons sur la page principale pour vous dire que le compendium est là pour vous outiller sur le plaidoyer juridique, l'hygiène numérique et soutenir vraiment de façon concrète les survivants. Donc, en résumé, comme il ne me reste que quelques secondes, c'est ce que je peux dire en termes de...
C'est bon, Emmanuel, tu peux continuer. On ajoute
OK,
2 minutes ou 3 minutes en plus pour mieux
OK,
expliquer.
merci.
Oui.
Donc, il est vraiment urgent pour nous d'agir parce que ce sont les chiffres qui parlent. Et lorsque vous-même, vous voyez ces chiffres, là, 73% de traumatisme psychologique ou encore 38% de femmes ayant subi des violences en ligne, il est important pour nous de pouvoir aider la population parce que souvent on pense que parce que la violence, elle est numérique, qu'elle n'a pas d'impact sur la vie humaine. Or, c'est totalement faux. Quand on prend le doxing ou le cyberharcèlement, nous sommes témoins de jour en jour de ces faits-là, parce que nous sommes sur les réseaux sociaux, que ce soit sur Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, X ou autres réseaux, nous voyons combien le doxing est présent, le cyberharcèlement, l'harcèlement en ligne et puis l'abus d'image. Et nous, notre devoir est de sensibiliser, d'outiller et surtout que les personnes soient, que nous soyons tous des acteurs qui travaillent pour ça, pour cette cause-là. Parce que ce sont des vies humaines qui sont en danger et nous devons vraiment de les aider. Donc, les données parlent pour nous et nous devons agir. Nous devons agir pour sauver des vies. Donc, voilà ce que je peux dire. Chaque donnée représente une femme dont la voix a été attaquée. Nous les rendons visibles pour rendre le changement inévitable. Donc, ne soyons pas juste des spectateurs lorsque nous sommes sur les réseaux sociaux. Nous avons un devoir et nous, RFLD, nous faisons notre part et nous voulons que toute la population, vous qui nous suivez, puissiez faire également la vôtre. Voilà la raison pour laquelle le compendium existe. N'hésitez pas à utiliser toutes les ressources que nous avons mises à disposition pour vous. Merci, Madame la facilitatrice. Voilà ce que je peux dire en quelques minutes.
Merci infiniment, Emmanuel, pour cette explication claire, pour cette belle présentation. Et nous avons vu à travers le globe les zones à haut risque, les zones à risque modéré et les zones qui ne présentent pas de risque. Alors, est-ce que nous observons pour des questions de suivi, hein, parce qu'il faut que les gens comprennent réellement de quoi nous parlons, le fond. Voilà, donc, est-ce que nous observons des tendances particulières dans les contextes francophones par rapport au contexte anglophone ou pour paraître un peu plus clair, quelles menaces émergentes te préoccupent le plus alors que nous nous tournons vers 2027? Hello?
Pardon?
Oui, Emmanuel,
Oui,
c'est
assez.
bon? Est-ce
Oui,
que...
la connexion est
OK.
partie un moment.
OK, d'accord, ça marche. Merci beaucoup. Alors, on va continuer à cause de l'heure. Je vais sauter rapidement et aller sur la prochaine panéliste. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for those clarifications. And next to Omolara. So, Omolara, you lead policy works across 15 West African countries. When we look at the legal landscape, from national cybercrime laws to regional panelists, regional frameworks, like ECOWAS protocols, where are we making progress and where are the critical gaps? Thank you. You have 12 minutes to answer.
Oh, fantastic. That's quite generous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me thank the entire RFLD team for the opportunities to be on this panel, especially considering the time. As we all know, this is the fourth industrial revolution. Technology seems to have taken over everything that we do. And it's important not only for Africa to keep catching up, we also need to pay attention to those that are quote and unquote unevenly affected. And I also want to appreciate the RFLD for the compendium that you have just presented. It's my first time of seeing that such a tool, such a resource actually exists. And I think it's always a beautiful thing to see African organizations pioneering initiatives like this. Unlike in the past that we all have to run to one UN platform, one AU platform, or even other platform of some of the popular INGOs to get accurate data. I really want to congratulate Gloria and the team for this innovative and strategic resources that has been produced for not only for women in Africa, but for us as experts to see the trends of digital violence and its impact or effect on the life of women and our socioeconomic status. I think we are all quite familiar with the current situation. Everything, if you're not on the internet, you are nowhere to be found. And so everything we do these days seems to be directly connected to internet. And like you said in your opening remarks, it is a critical issue, which is of paramount importance now, especially as the internet space continue to expand, reaching about 50% of the population now. It has also transformed to be a great platform for opportunities. I go on Instagram, just something that we all can relate to. I go on Instagram, on TikTok, I see so many women, men, alike putting forth their small businesses, marketing it on the internet. It's a great tool for economic empowerment. And whilst that is good, it has also, posed a lot of threats, violence, if you like, to the majority of women. In addition to that, the digital platform also contributes to silencing women's voices, as well as undermine their civic, engagement. And if we don't pay attention to all these things, I was just speaking with a friend of mine a few minutes ago that I can't believe Agenda 2030 is just 4 years away. I mean, who could have thought that? I remember when we started the pushing for the African position in 2015 for the SDGs, and here we are 4 years away. There is hardly one of the goals that we can boast of that we are going to achieve by 2030. I mean, we can, try to see if Goal 5 gender equality can be achieved, but it means that issues like this require even more attention. So the danger that comes with internet expansions, women's participation on the internet, digital transformation is quite clear. One of the studies that I ran into indicates that about 70 to 85% of online African women have encountered some form of digital harm, harassment, or thereabouts. And that level of harassment has led to the dropping off of about 20 to 30% female users because they were harassed. They just had to get off social media, get off one internet or the other due to harassment, one harm or the other, cyber stalking, etc. And when we look at the internet penetration, before I come to the legal framework, since I have like 12 minutes, as the internet penetration surges to over 50% across the continent, I think a country like Nigeria, Morocco, Nigeria, Morocco seems to be topping the list. Women comprises about 48% of the users, way lower than the male counterpart. But when you look at the risk, women are at greater risk, even though they are fewer on the internet, they are at greater risk than their male counterpart. And the UN Women African Strategy of 2022 to 2025 captured this, very clearly. Now, the situation, which is part of what you have raised in your opening remarks, the prevalence and the impact is quite there. We are seeing a lot of online harassment, girls being harassed online. I watch so many clips on the internet where young girls are being trailed by older male, into one form of harassment or the other. And when we look at the regional disparity, it is clear to say that across the sub-Saharan Africa, lifetime intimate partner violence affects about 31% of women. And this brings me to the points which you really want me to speak about, the legislative gaps. What are those? What is the current legislative structure, or framework that we have? And some of the data that are right into are quite staggering. They are scary. It's almost impossible to believe that about 84% of African countries with available data had enacted specific legislations on violence against women. Just last week, I was in Dakar, and we were talking about how to increase the number of countries that have ratified the AU CVOC. And we can see that we're taking baby steps on that when we are just 4 years away from achieving or the deadline of the SDGs. So the economic and social cost of digital violence is nothing to write home about for us on the African continent, because when women face this discriminations, harassment, the majority just want to drop off, the pages. In terms of the instruments that we have, and I dare say that on the continent, at the level of the AU and the ECOWAS, which I'm pretty much familiar with, we have done really well in putting provisions together. Whether you are looking at various African Union conventions, like the African Union Convention on Ending Violence against women and girls, the AU CVOC that I talked about a few minutes ago, it has within its provisions, a tech-enabled form that seeks to address the root causes, strengthening legal mechanism, and also promoting gender-sensitive policies. It also calls for harmonization of data protection, which is something that we already have captured within the Malabo Convention. In addition to that, we have the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, specifically resolution on the protection of women against digital violence, which was updated, I think, last year. This document also spoke about the need for countries to continue to push for awareness, awareness campaign and fostering international cooperations to combat online harassment. What do I mean? Our leaders are different at different country levels and at the continental level. We keep put documents together. We keep putting, our provisions together, legal framework together. But the major problem had always been enforcement. We also have the Continental Artificial Intelligence Strategies of 2024. These strategies specifically, which is I find quite fascinating, it integrates gender equality by promoting ethical AI governance. When we talk about artificial intelligence, I don't know whether you go to places that I visit on the internet, you see how women's body are being mutilated with all sorts of artificial intelligent tool, and it's been posted online. I'm sure you're very familiar with what is going on in the United States, where the owner of X platform and how some of the European countries are actually calling for some of the features of these platforms to be blocked, especially for young children, young girls, and people below the age of 18. We also have the Child Online Safety and Empowerment Policy. All of these documents, both at the level of the AU, at the level of the UN, at the level of ECOWAS, they have interesting and instructive provisions to protect our women against digital violence, online harassment, cyber stalking, and what have you. But implementation across all spectrums of leadership, from the continental to the regional to the national, had always been a major issue that we've had to deal with. Where there is lack of political will, especially where political leaders don't feel that it's a priority for them. When you look at countries, I mean, you can, for instance, look at countries like Benin, the Gambia, Nigeria, Guinea-Bissau. These are countries that are looking forward to holding elections. Imagine asking these leaders to prioritize, policies of this nature. They will probably not take it to be a priority. So when there's lack of political will, no matter how beautiful your provisions are, it's not going to yield any result. In addition to that, some of the data... 1 minute? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I will just go and let me just speak to some of the actions we need to take. And as an advocate, I think looking at the documents that we already have and the provisions within and the current situation that we find ourselves, especially with the constant exclusions of women due to this harassment, we need to amplify our advocacy. We need to hold our leaders to account. We need to put the women's issues that protect women, that promote gender equality as an agenda for political leaders to take seriously. And we have opportunity to do so, especially in countries that are, holding elections coming forward. We also need to look at the continental, with the African Union, AU-CVOG. One of the challenges that I had in the meeting that I attended in Dakar last week is the fact that even at the women's front, we have a lot of division on what the AU-CVOG, what it is and what it is not, what it seeks to address and what it lacks. When we have this kind of division, it brings unnecessary stress to our advocacy. And it also makes the leaders not to take us seriously, because if we are divided in our agenda, who is going to take us seriously? So I think we need to strengthen solidarity across borders. We need to strengthen the operationalization of AU's CVOG and its provisions. We also need to enhance the Continental Artificial Intelligence Strategy with gender-responsive safeguards. We need to look at that. We can't but implement policies that we have that do not have gender responsive safeguards within them. We need to demand for that. And I think it's also important. Like I said, I love what RFLD has done, but continental-wide, we need to establish a continental digital safety observatory where we will not only be seeing the data of this harassment and its impact of women, but we should look at the socioeconomic dimension of this impact on women. I think at this point, it's also important for us to look at how we can harmonize our data across countries, bearing in mind that some countries have access to more data than others. For example, big countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Egypt, all these big countries, they have, more capacity, resources, resilience, and access. How do we, at the level of the African Union, harmonize the data, and then the smaller countries, can leverage the strength of the other one? One last point for me to raise, my sister. I think when we are talking about artificial intelligence or digital security or online harassment, we cannot exclude the role of the private sector. Don't forget, technology is still very much profit-centered. In terms of inclusion of women having access to tech-enabled platform and having their protection, we need to begin to connect with tech entities, the core tech organizations, and see how in the design of their platforms, their tools, what do they call it now, their apps, how gender sensitive, what kind of gender safeguard are they imputing in their design? I think all of this, if well looked at and pushing forward with advocacy, will really yield greater impact. I'll pass the floor now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Olara. You mentioned some very key points that I will highlight here. We have to put echoes on awareness of legal frameworks. We have laws, we have legal frameworks, but we have to allow our continent to go inside the implementation of those laws and harmonize data across country, amplify advocacy, hold our leaders accountable, and strengthen solidarity across gender and connect through our technology. So thank you very much, Omolara, for this marvelous explanation and presentation you provided. And then we'll move to Dima. Thank you, Omolara. So Dima, you work with Skylines International, focuses on digital security for activists in high-risk contests. What are the essential digital hygiene practices every woman should know? And what are you saying in terms of adoption barriers across the continent? Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for having me and for this great question. Yeah, I think when, I want just to build on what other colleagues said, in terms of the legal frameworks and the issues that women are facing in North Africa or in the African continent as a general, issue. One of the things is when we talk about digital safety for women activists and journalists, we are talking about building a shield. And the most important tool in that shield is encryption. So encryption is not just a technical issue or like something we see on applications or on emails, etc., but it's a backbone for human rights. And to put it simply, encryption is like a digital envelope. So just as you wouldn't send a private letter as a postcard for someone or anyone, to read, encryption ensures that your messages can only be read and opened to the person you intended. So it keeps your conversations private and, private and also away from hackers, from bad actors, from state surveillance, etc. And this is also the foundation for freedom of expression, the right to privacy, and freedom of assembly. So without the ability to communicate privately, journalists cannot protect their sources, and activists cannot organize safely, especially in countries where civic space is shrinking or closing. And we have seen tools like WhatsApp, like Signal, how they have been the engine of political mobilization and revolutions for the last decade for this very reason. However, in countries like in Egypt, in Tunisia, and Morocco, we see governments shifting towards criminalizing the use of encryption or taking some steps to restrict use of encryption. So, for example, in Egypt, cybercrime law of 2018, it allows the state to block any tool they claim threatens national security. And since 2016, we have seen how the Egyptian government have blocked access to Signal and hundreds of VPNs during political protests in Egypt. And the law even criminalizes using encryption to conceal evidence, which sounds logical, when you first hear it, but until you realize that the state defines the crimes as broadly as journalistic research or organizing a forum. The same situation is in Tunisia, so that digital telecommunication code requires a government approval for almost any encryption system. We had a brief moment in 2018 when civil society organizations successfully pushed back against a restrictive digital code. That regulation would have criminalized use of encryption if passed, but it was a success again for civil society, and it has been withdrawn. But we also see, the cybercrime law or Decree 54 in Tunisia, which also has been turned the simple act of sharing information just among, women journalists or activists, that this can put you actually in jail. In Morocco, the situation is equally concerning. So the constitution says that it protects and guarantees the right to privacy. But we have seen cases where journalists and activists, including women, have been charged with threatening internal security of the state under the Moroccan Penal Code for promoting a mobile app that protected user privacy. And the Moroccan authorities viewed this promotion of the app as they saw it as because it promotes anonymity and it has a secure communications, they saw it as a threat to the loyalty that citizens owe to the state. But also we must keep in mind when we talk about encryption that it's not just a magic wand. So it's totally useless when passwords or data are extracted under torture or threats, which is a reality that many women activists in our communities face during detention. And adding to this, encryption also doesn't hide everything. So even if your messages are turned into unreadable code, so others cannot read them, but your metadata remains visible. So this means things like your internet addresses you use and the timing of your connections can still be visible. But also now when we talk about these technical shields, when they are stripped away, the attack on women moves from the digital to the deeply personal. For women in our region, especially in North Africa and the Middle East, we see how digital attacks are like they often as a social execution for women. So for example, if your pictures have been leaked online or your information, very private information, that can put you at high risk. We saw this also in Tunisia with the 2022 judicial strikes, where female judges had their private medical records, including virginity tests, leaked on Facebook pages affiliated with the police unions to shame them into silence. In Morocco, we have seen cases including journalists like Hajar Raisouni. She had her private life weaponized against her by pro-government media outlets. They leaked her home address, they leaked her phone number on social media platforms, which in any conservative society, this is a direct invitation for physical assault. So these doxing campaigns seek to tarnish women's reputations and deter their human rights activism. And now, as my other colleague said, we are seeing an evolution with the AI. Tools like Grok on X, they have been caught in a global scandal for generating millions of non-consensual sexual images and deepfake nudes of women. And this is where platforms like Meta and X and others, they have failed us completely. They do not have any specific policies to protect women in this context, and they do not invest in content moderators who speak our language or understand the local context. They don't also understand that when a home address is leaked, this can lead to a real-world harm. So they just let the content stay on the platform for days, months, or even years. And by the time they act, the damage is irreversible. So to protect ourselves, what we need to do is that we need to be our own first responders. And this means decoupling our lives. So it's important for you not to use your primary phone number for social media accounts, and that you can use instead a voice IP or a second SIM for public accounts. For communications, I strongly recommend using Signal as it collects no metadata, almost no metadata. So it doesn't track who you talk to or when. And it's also important to keep your messages, deleted by default whenever you start any chat. Lastly, just a couple of points. You have also to use two-factor authentication on every door of your digital life, on your social media accounts, on your emails, or even your Signal app. And I can, later on send, maybe we can follow up, we can send a list of applications that we think are good. But you have always to remember that, digital safety or security is a collective responsibility. So while connecting to the internet means no one is ever completely safe, but this kind of consistent digital hygiene tips can significantly mitigate our risks for you and for the people around you, your family, your loved ones, and all. So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tima. You said that we have to build a shield around us on social media. And she also gave us some rules to follow to be safe and to keep digital hygiene around us, our brethren in our family and our colleagues. Thank you very much, Dima, for this wonderful presentation. So back to our last speaker, Shupike. Shupike, as you said earlier, we can call you Shupi. You coordinate the VUCA Coalition work on civic space and digital rights. What are you saying in terms of content moderation failures, and what advocacy strategies are actually moving the needle with the companies? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I think the panel is so strong. I hope I'll be able to justify my existence here. So just following and picking up from other speakers, and also really speaking from my perspective from the VUCA Coalition, which is actually global. So what are the intersecting lessons around accountability and transnational advocacy and digital violence in Africa? I think, Gloria, you did highlight that the digital engagement is good, but the other side could be very ugly. Emma, I really appreciate the interactive map. I think that's priceless data. And just adding on to what Omulara had mentioned, that it's echoing the congratulations on and achievement to have our own data and tools in African-led institutions. That becomes more authentic to us, and it resonates strongly with the rest of us. And then again, Dima on the hygiene. So where I am in terms of amplifying advocacy and accountability, and building on what the other speakers have said, my presentation is not very technical in terms of the digital space itself, but it's really looking at how digital violence in Africa is not only a safety issue, and it shows that in most cases, it is a failure of platform governance. So I will look at this in 4 main points. The first point being that digital violence as a platform for accountability problems. So often we find that digital violence is framed in the form of individual harm, as we've heard, a behavioral issue, which is a perception rather than the reality, or a problem of so-called bad users. But we find that across regions, what we are seeing instead is systematic platform failure. And I think that speaks to both government and the business sector around this. This means failure to recognize gendered harms as political harm, to enforce community standards consistently across different languages and different regions, and in Africa across all 55 countries, to invest in context-specific moderation of African civic actors, and to respond rapidly whenever attacks are coordinated, transnational, or strategic. So for women, human rights defenders, journalists, feminist organizers, and other civic leaders, platforms are not neutral spaces as we often would want to believe. They are uneven terrains of power where abuse is amplified and reporting mechanisms are weak and accountability is fragmented. And when the platforms fail us, the cost borne by those who are already exposed is too high. And I think that's something we heard very much from Omolara and Dima. as well as what's being highlighted by the interactive map. The second point I'd like to put across is well-being as a political practice in the age of platform violence or online violence. So why I really would like to name well-being strongly in this conversation. And it's because that as VUCA, we understand well-being not only as self-care and not resilience training, or not as individual responsibility, but a holistic approach that looks at well-being as political infrastructure, which fits very well with digital use and digital spaces. Digital violence does not only silence people through fear and intimidation, it also works through amplifying the violence that's already existed. That's through exhaustion, so constantly getting into contact with negative content, through trauma that accumulates quietly, so whether you're the victim or you're watching other victims, and through sacrifice cultures where harm is absorbed rather than addressed. This comes from a dialogue that we've had on well-being earlier. And our cross-regional well-being dialogue surfaced a consistent truth that movements don't collapse only because of repression. They collapse because people are burnt out, traumatized into silence, and unsupported while doing high-risk work. And again, it speaks a lot to the amount of work and the amount of time we are interacting with the digital space. So digital well-being is very important. For digital activists and women human rights defenders in particular, platform violence is not periodic. It's consistent. And like we've heard, that hacking into your personal accounts or going further and demonizing encryption, making that your information accessible throughout to anyone and everyone. The emotional toll of surveillance, harassment, and coordinated abuse becomes invisible labor that movements are rarely resourced to respond to or designed to hold. That is why we say well-being, digital well-being in particular, is not a luxury. It is hard infrastructure for civic action. So it's important that we take care of ourselves in terms of digital well-being. The third part I'd like to emphasize is why platform accountability and well-being are inseparable. This is where platform accountability becomes inseparable, because when platforms fail to give us the security we need, they externalize harm onto users. So especially if you are on social media channels and you're doing your work on social media channels, you should always be alert that you are prone to violence. They push the cost of safety onto individuals and movements, and they quietly expect activists to engage trauma on their own. At this point, well-being is no longer a wellness issue. It becomes a governance issue. And again, it speaks to the point that Omolara made, that we have so many regional frameworks and policies, but the gaps are in implementation and political will to really understand how we are affected by digital violence. Sorry. And lastly, as VUCA, although we are not a feminist movement and very intentional about that, but feminist actors, we recognize that feminist actors have long named what civic space networks are only beginning to see. That harm is gendered, that is cumulative, and that it is structurally produced. Therefore, we are carrying out a survey on feminist pathways as a way for us to listen more carefully to understand how platform governance, internet governance, and civic space strategies and well-being intersect, and where existing approaches fail that most expose activists. And this does not speak to a single organization or country or a movement, but networks that can coordinate evidence. And I'm happy that WAXI is here, because they are actually very big champions in that kind of coordination, pressure, and RFLD through all their feminist work. So before I close down, I would like to kind of bring in three interlocking issues where digital accountability and ensuring that digital spaces are governed in ways that do not reproduce harm, exclusion, and silence. That's our responsibility as civic leaders, but also in the kind of work that we do and in the communities that we serve. And secondly, transnational advocacy and recognizing that neither digital violence neither digital violence or any other kind of violence on the digital space stops at borders, especially as we are here probably represented in more than, in almost all the countries in Africa. So we need to know that there are no digital barriers. And then third, sustaining civic action, including well-being, is a shared movement asset and not an afterthought and not an individual burden. And this speaks directly to the use of the compendium that has just been launched and that Emma and her team have worked on very, very passionately, and its use. So together, these pillars allow us to move from reacting to harm, but being more proactive in the digital space. And I'd like to pause for a bit of introspection for yourselves and some questions I've had in my head over some time. Who is expected to absorb the harm so that digital spaces remain open? So where is government and where's the business sector in this? Whose abuse is treated as noise rather than as political violence? All abuse on digital spaces should be considered political violence, and there should be no excuse or over prioritizing one violence over the other. And when platforms talk about safety, when we talk about safety, who defines what is acceptable, what acceptable risks look like? Therefore, once again, I'll echo that the compendium is a good start in all the advocacy work that institutions like RFLD as well as WAXI are doing, and the information that's provided by Skyline is not only relevant to North Africa, but is relevant to all Africans who are seated in this particular webinar. And what I'd like to say at the end is digital violence is not inevitable, but accountability does not happen by default. It means we have to proactively engage with policy. We have to proactively equip ourselves with knowledge, and we have to proactively understand what are the digital trends, what digital trends are emerging and what risks they pose for us. And once again, the compendium does this for us and every other institution represented here. It happens when movements, networks, and regions act together across borders, across issues, and across power. So VUCA looks forward to continuing this work in solidarity with feminist movements, digital rights defenders, and civic space actors, ensuring that digital accountability is not a slogan, but rather a shared and enforceable practice through some of our advocates, which we already have mentioned from RFLD as well as from WAXI. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the speakers for actually setting the scene for my presentation as well. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Shupi. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. And you mentioned that digital safety is not an issue of luxury, but is very important for our well-being. So we have to equip ourselves with knowledge and stay safe. So we are at the end of the presentation from our speakers. So we'll focus on some follow-up question right now. And then I'll start by Omolara from WAXI. And after we'll go through all the four speakers together. And after that, we'll come to the question and answer phase. And after that, we'll finish the webinar in good moods. So thank you very much once again, Shupi, for the presentation. Back to Omolara. So please tell us about Nigeria's code of practice on digital platform. What made it successful? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I need to put a disclaimer here that I don't work directly on Nigeria Code of practice on digital platform. But a few points that I think would serve as learning curve for other countries. Nigeria is a big country and has one of the largest digital platforms in terms of population and, of course, tech organization. And one thing I have noticed, which has been really instrumental into the progress that Nigeria has made, is the collaborations between the emergence of this organization we refer to as civic tech organization. These are organizations that are between, core technology and are also civic conscious. I think this is something that we need to replicate across the different countries. So it does not automatically, grant 100% power to the technology, to the core tech firms without that civic-centered firm. I think we need more of civic tech organizations within our respective countries. What this does is that it forces the tech institutions to inculcate, civic insight and principles, gender-sensitive policies, like we are talking about, gender safeguards, and all other, important protections into the work that they do. And this is the core responsibility of the civic tech organization. In addition to that, having the consciousness, if you're very familiar with Nigeria is a very conscious country. And this is not, I don't live in Nigeria. I haven't lived in Nigeria for almost 2 decades, but I know who these people are, even though I'm one of them, and this has a lot to do with the inclusion or participation of young people within the civic space. And if you really understand this generation of young digital users, they really do know what their rights are and are not. This does not mean that they are completely excluded from some form of violence or the other, but the rate at which knowledge is exchanged, the rate at which capacity is exchanged between among them across platforms. I mean, you need to go on Twitter and see how they stand for a cause. It's like a virtual world. And in addition to that, part of the progress that you're also seeing is the investment that some of these civic organizations are making in capacity building, resilience building, and institutional strengthening. And I can now maybe appreciate WACSI for our own contribution as well, looking at how do we strengthen the capacities of organization? How do we help organization to build a solid digital infrastructure that does not only protect the organization as a legal entity, but protects the individuals that are working with this organization, of which includes women. And even for women, women-led organizations like RFLD, Femlet, Baobab, and so many of them, WACSI and other organizations provide support to these organizations to be able to have what we call, I think we have a program that we call digital protections, digital security and protection. What this program does is that it exposes organizations to their vulnerabilities and then help them to build safeguards within their system for protection against online, harassment, cyber stalking, malwares, etc., etc. In addition to that, we recognize where capacity, and when we're talking about capacity, not only in terms of the skills, but even the money and the resources. So one of the things that WACSI also does, which is being supported by, what is it called now? Microsoft, is providing tools for organizations to work with, including women's organization. So we provide subsidized software for women's organizations, for youth organization, community-based, so far you are within the nonprofit sector, you have access to that, affordable software, some materials, some resources that would naturally cost $100. You get it within our TechSoup program for like $5, $7 and thereabout. And you could see that these are This has really enhanced the capacity of local organization and even the big one in terms of their tech adoption. So instead of running away from the tech space because it's expensive, because it's technical, due to the support that we give, you can see many organizations now jumping to the tech space now because they are armed, they are protected, they know how to navigate, the hiccups, the bottlenecks and the challenges on the platform. In addition to that, we also work with organizations on how to strengthen not only their digital skill, but their social activism skill. How do you conduct advocacy? How do you do activism on digital platform in a very secure manner? Because at times, out of the passion for the work that we do, we don't pay attention to the challenges, that comes with it or the potential pitfalls on this platform. So these are some of the areas that WACSI and other civic tech organizations are providing support. And that is one way, one thing that has really enhanced the progress made in Nigeria, because they have a lot of civic tech organizations. I can mention them from Resilience Tech to Paradigm Initiative to so many of them, and they are doing amazing work. So I think this is something that we need to ensure exists across our countries, just to serve as buffer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Omolara. And thank you for the wonderful work WACSI is doing over there. And now back to Emmanuel. I'll shift into French. Emmanuel, merci beaucoup pour ta présentation précédente. Alors, tout à l'heure, on avait parlé sur des zones à risque modéré, des zones à haut risque et des zones qui ne présentent pas du tout de risque. Est-ce que tu peux repartir sur cela pour expliquer mieux, pour que nous puissions réellement voir de quoi il s'agit? Merci.
Ok, avec plaisir. Alors, je vais partager mon écran. Voilà. Donc, on part sur la carte interactive, c'est ça? Ou si on prend un pays?
Oui. Peut-être tu reprends l'Algérie comme le monsieur l'avait proposé avant. Oui.
D'accord. Donc là, lorsqu'on prend l'Algérie, on voit que c'est un risque modéré. Mais toutefois, c'est modéré, mais avec des points de 2% de violence numérique. Un taux de ce sont des données de 2024 à 2025, donc des données récentes. Et nous avons l'état des lieux des violences numériques. Donc, quand on parle d'état des lieux, c'est qu'est-ce qui se passe concrètement en Algérie. Tout à l'heure, j'ai entendu une des panélistes qui parlait des journalistes qui sont vraiment harcelés, des journalistes qui sont dans le vif du sujet, qui subissent le cyberharcèlement. Donc là, dans l'état des lieux, ça peut se voir concrètement. Et lorsque nous prenons le cadre juridique et politique, bien que l'Algérie soit signataire de plusieurs instruments internationaux, cela n'empêche pas qu'on remarque des dysfonctionnements en termes de violence, numérique. Et donc, nous recommandons bien sûr d'harmoniser la législation en Algérie avec le protocole de Maputo et la résolution 522 de la CHDHP. Et donc, voilà comment ça se présente pour chaque pays, que les pays soient à risque modéré ou non. Nous faisons des recommandations et il est important que chaque pays puisse prendre en compte ces recommandations-là. Parce que peut-être que le pays n'a pas de risque, mais si elle ne sauvegarde pas ce qu'elle a actuellement, elle risque de se retrouver en risque modéré ou bien en danger. Donc, on va peut-être prendre le cas de, je sais pas, Libéria. pour voir ce que ça donne. C'est toujours un risque modéré. Je voulais un cas où le risque, il est peut-être l'Afrique du Sud. Oui, voilà. Là, par exemple, on voit que le risque, il est très élevé. Et on parle de l'Afrique du Sud quand même. C'est un grand pays, plus de 60 millions d'habitants. Et c'est un pays à haut risque, c'est classé à haut risque dans tout ce qui est violence numérique, sécurité numérique. Donc, vous pouvez le remarquer dans les états de lieu, dans l'état des lieux, les violences numériques que nous avons relevées avec les sources probantes que nous avons à notre niveau. Donc, les données sont actualisées et vous pouvez les utiliser, que ce soit dans le cadre d'une étude ou que ce soit dans le cadre d'un plaidoyer. Donc, nous recommandons également à l'Afrique du Sud d'utiliser, d'harmoniser la législation avec le protocole de Maputo et la résolution 522 de la CHDHP. C'est crucial pour eux, sinon vraiment, déjà, ils sont à un risque très élevé. Bon, s'ils ne prennent pas en compte ces recommandations, bon, ça va dégénérer et on ne le souhaite pas. On souhaite vraiment réduire le taux de personnes atteintes par ces violences-là. Donc, voilà ce que je peux ajouter. Bon, on va peut-être prendre un profil où il n'y
On
a
n'a pas
pas...
assez de temps, je pense que c'est bon.
OK.
Oui, merci. Merci beaucoup. Merci pour la lumière apportée. Now we have to shift to Dima because of time. Dima, please, back to you. You mentioned some tools and emergency protocols for women who are not tech savvy or lack resources. So, how do we make these tools culturally relevant and accessible? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I think what we really need to do now is there are some tools that exist that can, help women to protect their privacy and security. Although we have also to be mindful that, with the internet, almost no one is safe, but we are doing our best. But it's also important to ensure that these applications are tailored. So like there are some explanation, for example, in localized languages of how women can use these applications and how they can protect themselves, how they can, work with the different functionalities, let's say with the VPNs, how they can use it, how they can also use the password manager, etc. There are different applications that are out there, but we still need to work on the localization. This is what I believe in. We need more security trainings for women also and girls, how they can keep themselves online, especially with what other colleagues mentioned, the evolution of AI, and now we are seeing technology becoming more and more, more sophisticated. So I would also advise everyone here, not to share your photos on ChatGPT or any AI-generated tools, that can take your photos, and then who knows how this will be used against you in the future, if not now. So yeah, I think these are like the most important things. I hope that women can keep in mind, and unfortunately, sometimes in such societies, it's really hard to keep ourselves safe. Also, giving the society and there are some conservative societies. It's really hard sometimes, for women to be able to express themselves online, to do their activism. But yeah, I think it's important to have these tools tailored for women, and that it would be easier for them to use them.
Oh, thank you. My mic was off. Thank you very much, Dima. Thank you for the tools you give. Back to Shupi from Zimbabwe. I know that Shupi is from Zimbabwe. Please, Shupi, Zimbabwe has faced internet shutdown during political crisis. How did civil society respond? 2 minutes.
Thank you very much for your question, Gloria. So like you rightly noted, we tend to face, like most regions, internet shutdowns during high risk moments like elections or wherever protests are being organized. And I also remember last year, towards the SADC summit, there was a moment where it's not full shutdowns that tend to happen. We tend to get something called semi-shutdowns. I'm not a tech savvy. Maybe that's something Dima can help me name, where you could have access to certain kinds of websites, and then you have no access to social media. So I think what's important to note from that is the governments that we work with, let's not undermine their capacity. Let's not undermine the skills and expertise that they deploy. So they are at par with our understanding of digital security, and not even, in most instances, they could be ahead because they own the infrastructure. They have the resources as well. So what then tends to happen is, even in moments where we tend to use VPNs, they can override VPNs. And for some of us, our internet access is through Starlink, that has a government control, and all other countries in the world. So whenever shutdowns take place, we tend not to think of them only, not in terms of what they mean for just civic space, but but we can consider them to be economic and political instruments. So outside the elections and the high risk moments, you will find that it could be during budget speeches or some kind of advocacy happening around aspects that are quite sensitive, including issues around mining, around investments. You will find that we do also tend to experience very short-term, very limited access to internet. So that's also how we need to kind of navigate the space, that at times the access is not just over a whole day. It could just be an explosive 1 hour or 15 minutes, so that we stop getting access to certain kind of resources. So we then consider this, that internet shutdowns sit at the intersection of state power, capital control, business, and gender precarity. And what that means is beyond that, they tend to then, for women in particular, because we're a highly informalized and feminized economy, women survive through the use of mobile money, WhatsApp markets, cross-border trade.
1 minute more. Yes.
You get so disruptions in their livelihoods, but also I think what I would like to emphasize is, let's think of the nuance, not what we know broadly, but the nuance, the 5 minutes shutdown, the 15 minutes shutdown, and the selective shutdowns. So those are the kind of nuances we are also kind of experiencing and starting to learn about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Choupi. Merci beaucoup à toutes et chacun, chères intervenantes. Merci à vous pour ces belles présentations, chers participants et participantes. Merci pour votre attention et votre écoute. Nous sommes là maintenant à 9 minutes de la fin et nous allons utiliser 8 minutes pour pouvoir passer aux questions et réponses. Et là, vous posez vos questions, vous levez la main et vous posez des questions. Et les panélistes sont ouverts à répondre à chacune à ces questions-là. Et là, nous passons à la dernière phase qui est la clôture. Merci de lever la main si vous avez des questions et vous posez vos questions et les panélistes sont là pour répondre. Je vous remercie. Alors, nous prenons Fatoumata. Après, nous prenons Arafat. Après, nous prenons Bator.
Hello.
Oui, merci.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Arafat Abbas. I'm speaking from Ghana. I work with Savannah Signatures. And I have a question for Dima, actually. So my question has to do with the issue of internet safety for women. So it's simple as this. What if I as a woman, I have already put up my information on these digital platforms? Is there really a protocol that can help minimize the damage that may come in the future? Thank you.
Gloria, do you want to take other questions or?
You can answer directly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Arafat, for this question. So unfortunately, there is like no specific policies on, let's say, Facebook or X or other social media platforms that if the private information of someone is published, is that they have to take it. This is not something that is addressed by social media platforms. We know for a fact that if your information is leaked or published on Google, for example, you can report that directly, and there is a form that you have to fill in that you ask Google to remove all your information from, Google search. But for the other social media platforms, you have to get directly in touch with them. And even though we know that sometimes the response from these platforms is low, but we have to keep pressuring them. We have to add this extra layer of accountability so that we can expose that they are not responding to these cases, that they are not taking into consideration our safety and security. So I think this is a very important step. You can do it. If you have any specific cases, please feel free to reach out. We can connect you with other help desks or digital rights organizations who have direct connection to these platforms. And, if there is a case, we can help hopefully remove this private information. Yeah, I hope this answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Dima. I think that we have to collect all the questions so that we can have the time, we'll see the time to structure and answer to the question accordingly. So we give the floor to Anita and Rachel. Please, quick, the time is going. Thank you. Ouvrez vos micros, s'il vous plaît, posez vos questions. Allô? Est-ce que Rachel est là ou Anita? Sinon, s'il y a d'autres personnes qui ont la main levée ou qui veulent poser des questions, le micro est ouvert. Vous pouvez ouvrir votre micro et poser la question. Je vous remercie. OK. Sinon, nous n'avons plus de personnes qui ont levé leur main pour poser des questions. I'll give 1 minute to each speaker to give their closing remarks. Thank you. We'll start from Dima, as you are right there. 1 minute. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe less. Yeah, I just want to say that please always be mindful of everything that you publish online, especially if you are in a context where this poses more risks to yourself. We need to work more on, making like, let's say, contributions that are anonymized so that we have a platform for women, we can express ourselves safely, and we really need this safe space that unfortunately it's not out there yet. And yeah, I think always keep in mind that technology is evolving. You have to always also more research on your own sometimes to understand like if you use this VPN, it could be okay for you, but in other countries, this could be illegal. So even when you are looking for tools to protect yourself, always look at any risks it might, put you at. And yeah, I just love, this vibes having many women here in this room, and that we can hopefully collectively build something together, like having more resources that we can help one another, hopefully, you know, to protect women and girls in this online space and the internet in general. That's my last.
Thank you, Dima. Right to Shupi.
Thank you so much, RFLD, for the compendium. I really think it's an amazing tool. And I would also like to thank the other speakers. Like, they really gave the setup to the conversation and made it very strong. And again, it's always about accountability, and the internet governance remain a very strong policy part that we need to interact with. So thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shupi. Back to Omolara.
All right. Thank you
1
so
minute.
much. Yeah,
1
I
minute,
know.
please.
Thank you. I mean, I really like to appreciate RFLD for creating this kind of platforms to connect with amazing women, leaders who have been working tirelessly to ensure that the rights of women are way protected beyond the physical spaces into the digital spaces. I really want to appreciate you. And thank you to RFLD for, you know, creating this platform and, you know, allowing me to connect with these amazing sisters. I think one thing I would like to part with is for us not to neglect every advocacy opportunity that we have to advance some of the interesting, you know, recommendation that has come forth from this conversation. Some of us, we have access to different spaces, different leaders. Let's always put the women's agenda, gender agenda in every spaces, every room we have opportunity to get into. And I believe one step at a time, we will make that change that we desire. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup à Omolara de Waxi. À présent, nous donnons le micro à Emmanuel. Emmanuel, des mots de fin. 1 minute.
D'accord. Alors, merci à chacune des panélistes. Merci à tous ceux qui sont restés du début à la fin pour ce webinaire. Et vraiment, je voudrais nous inviter à agir parce que les données parlent. Maintenant, nous devons agir. C'est beau, tout ce que nous avons présenté. N'hésitez pas à vous rendre sur cette plateforme, à utiliser ce compendium qui a été confectionné, qui a été réalisé pour vous. Que vous soyez OSC, que vous soyez une personne physique, allez sur le compendium et téléchargez les fichiers qui sont là pour outiller vos plaidoyers. Donc, tout ce que j'ai à dire, c'est que les données parlent et puis maintenant, nous devons agir. Alors, agissons ensemble. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, merci beaucoup. Merci, chers panélistes. Merci, chers participants et participantes pour vos interventions, pour votre écoute active, pour les interactions depuis 1h30. Merci beaucoup. Nous avons diagnostiqué le problème ensemble et nous avons partagé les solutions. Nous sommes maintenant à la fin de notre parcours. En ce moment, les 1h30 sont bouclées. Ce compendium n'est pas seulement une recherche, mais c'est une feuille de route que nous devons suivre pour pouvoir opérer des changements n'importe où que nous serons ou où nous sommes. Alors, il y a des liens qui ont été envoyés dans le chat. S'il vous plaît, consultez ces liens, visitez le compendium et visitez également d'autres plateformes. Il y a des liens, les liens sont disponibles. Je voyais les liens envoyés par le secrétariat. Merci infiniment à vous pour votre disponibilité et je pense que à très, très bientôt pour une prochaine interaction. Merci.